I got too much stuff in my brain right now, man. It's one of these crazy mornings. Sorry. You said something I wanted to respond to, and I literally brain farted on it. I got nothing. So let's talk about Arizona State.
It happens, man.
And Colorado. Yeah, exactly. I mean, seriously, when you're like, all right, prep for 20 games on a podcast, make sure you got talking points on all of them. And then you're like, you said something, I should have written it down. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was. It's brutal. Arizona State, Colorado. So, look, the Buffs, in my mind, are a little bit overvalued right now. And this line is telling us don't trust Colorado. I mean, things have broken well. You look at who they beat in Colorado State. Oh, they blew them out. Well, guess what? Colorado State's been god-awful. Nebraska. Oh, Nebraska hasn't won a game. All right, New Hampshire. Okay, they were 33-point favorites. UCLA, they blew them out. Okay, who cares? They literally, when you're talking about the most disappointing teams in the country, you say maybe Colorado has something to do with it, but Colorado State, Nebraska, UCLA, you can make a case that's 1, 2, 3 for the most disappointing teams in the country, and Colorado's faced them all. So you worry about the value side of the equation. And, I mean, they've got the one wideout who's just a stud, Chanel, who's just, NFL caliber player. And they have McIntyre, who has a coach I really, really admire. But I've seen Arizona State play on the road. They've kept their composure. Manny Wilkins is making plays, and they're the better of the two teams defensively. I don't think there's any question in that regard that Arizona State is a superior defensive ball club. So you got an equal matchup at QB. You got the better defense, and you're catching points. You can understand why the Buffs haven't taken a whole lot of money. This line's still sitting at 2.5 in most locations.
And Teddy, you say the line tells us that Arizona's the side. Is that because it's 2.5 across the board? Colorado's laying at home, and we're not seeing many threes?
Sure, we're not seeing. I mean, let's. Let me just give me 1 second, and I'll get you my. I would have thought this line would have come a little bit higher. My number was 4, and the fact that it's open 2.5, and it's sat there. A lot of times around the key number, it opens around a key number. You're going to see the groups move early to take advantage of that key number and get to 2.5 before it moves to 3. This line ain't going there.
Makes sense. Hey, let's take a step down in class here. 357, 358. Liberty at New Mexico State. Looks like Liberty laying 463.5 the total.
Two teams that I have not seen play this year, and I don't recall. I mean, Liberty's one. I can't find info on Liberty. You got good info on it because they're a team I never see, and I really don't read about a whole lot. So I'm not getting involved with. It's an easy pass. Let's put it that way. I'm looking for info and opinions on teams. And these are two squads that I don't know. Certainly Liberty's a squad. New Mexico State, I know. I've seen them play. They're god-awful, which is why Liberty is taking money. Bet up to 4 as we speak. And I'm even seeing 5s popping up around town. Nobody wants Doug Martin's Aggies.
In-state matchup here, Teddy. North Texas at UTEP. Looks like the Mean Green laying 27 on the road, 53.5 the total in El Paso.
Yeah, you want the dog?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Especially in the situation North Texas is in this game after last week.
Yeah, UTEP's covered. I mean, they're 0-5. They're ranked at or near the bottom in every set of power ratings you'll find in college football. They are a bottom 5 team this year, and it's I don't get to the window with bottom 5 teams in college football unless there's a really strong reason for me to do that. And we saw last week Texas San Antonio, who's way down this year, and UTEP. Oh, they covered. They were 10-point dogs. They lost by 9. They covered against Tennessee too. What happened? They got shut out in that game. Tennessee just didn't put the ball in the end zone. And they got they were outgained by 378 yards. UTEP is bad. North Texas, those guys were monsters. You saw what they did to SMU, and then Arkansas, and then Liberty, and then last week the hiccup against La Tech. It's a Mean Green team that's been on a mission in early season play. They've certainly been great money makers. They had a bad second half last week. Outscored 20-0 in the third quarter after taking. Oh, sorry, that was the second quarter. They didn't score a point in the fourth quarter last week, though. That's certainly worth noting for North Texas, which is something I wouldn't expect to happen 2 weeks in a row. And then in-state rival, yes, long way to travel. Texas is a big state, man, going from Denton to El Paso.
Teddy, let's head to the Pac-12 for the next 2 games. Washington at UCLA to start us off. Looks like Washington 21 on the highway, 50.5 the total.
Yeah, I mean, the markets are really struggling to find anyone who's going to bet UCLA, which is why we're seeing numbers like this, where they're 21-point dogs against an opponent. Say what you want about the Huskies. They scored 16, 21, 27, and 35 in 4 games against D1 competition. This is not an explosive offense. They've not yet gotten 500 yards of offense in a game. And it comes down to the quarterback play. I mean, I feel like I say the same thing about Washington every week. They got NFL wideouts. They got NFL running backs. They don't have an NFL quarterback. And it makes it difficult for me to lay points with them in this range. That being said, they're 5-0 to the under so far this season. This defense is absolutely dynamite. And UCLA is, I'm not even calling them a work in progress offensively. They're getting worse, not better. It's clearly a situation where there is no quarterback. If you want to talk about a team that has no seniors contributing, go look at what UCLA seniors have done this year. Chip Kelly's going younger and youngest. And that's not necessarily a good sign for UCLA in 2018, although it could be a positive sign for the future.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. It might not be good for this year, Teddy, but to get those young guys some experience, it's kind of like the economy. Sometimes you want it to hit bottom so it can bounce up fast, not just slow roll as far as no production there from the UCLA squad. But let's stay in the Pac-12. Utah at Stanford. Looks like 46 the total, with Stanford laying 5 at home. This Utah team, Teddy, I don't know what they did to the Pac-12 schedule makers, but they got all the big boys from the North Division. Here's another one.
Yeah, and that's again, it's early season play. And just looking real quick. The Pac-12 is no joke, man. But after this, they had Arizona, then USC, then UCLA, Arizona State, Oregon, Colorado, and BYU. It's not a lot of easy games for Kyle Whittingham's squad this season. And the Utes are another team that you look at the offense and you say, okay, who can make a play for Utah? I haven't seen it. I really haven't seen it. And when they face anything resembling good, look, Tyler Huntley's got 821 passing yards on the season. Zach Moss can run the football. They can hand off to Moss. Playmaking receivers, I haven't seen any. I really haven't seen any. Huntley's not chucking it around downfield. It's a dink and dunk and run the football type of offense, which Stanford, in theory, should be able to stop. On the other hand, you worry about the energy level for the Cardinal. That wild game against Oregon and then the blowout at Notre Dame. They got the bye coming up. In theory, it's supposed to be circle the wagons for the Cardinal after this one. Very competitive series last year. Stanford laying 4.5 on the road. They only won by 3, and I wouldn't be surprised here at all if this is a relatively tight defensive struggle, even though KJ Costello has the ability throw the football around the field. Utah's defense, rock solid. It really is, both against the run and the pass.
We got 365, 366. Fresno State at Nevada. Looks like Fresno laying 14 on the highway, 58 the total.
Yeah, key info here as we speak. As of this morning, Ty Ganji, the Wolfpack quarterback, has been downgraded to doubtful, and that certainly is a significant issue, considering that Ganji's been, 11 touchdowns, averaging 7.3 yards an attempt. He's a dual threat guy, can run out of the pocket, and that Wolfpack offense, they've been really good. And with Mannix and Fossum as a pair of big play wideouts, I thought, and my initial reaction to this game was, I like the over here. I like the over, and then of course now the QB's hurt, and I don't like the over so much. The markets are finally getting Fresno right after a year and a half of being an absolute juggernaut that has been priced like a good team, but not a great team. Now we're starting to see Fresno laying 2 TDs on the highway. And we talked about this with Alabama last week, and it played out perfectly. Hey, guess what? When your team leads at halftime 49-0 and they don't cover the point spread, that tells you that the value period for that team has come and gone. Here's Fresno, who's been a great value team in recent years. Now here they are laying 2 touchdowns on the road against a team that can put the biscuit in the basket. That tells us pretty clearly the Bulldogs, this has been a really impressive point spread run. It's lasted a year and a half right now. And point spread runs can last like that, especially when we're talking about teams that are coming from the absolute bottom and teams that are playing in non-Power 5 conferences. But like any point spread run, eventually the team gets priced correctly, and I think we're starting to see that with McMarion and the Bulldogs at this stage of the campaign.
Teddy, you said that's how you know the value's starting to go. What were you saying as your example there?
Well, I was using Alabama as an example. Where Alabama last week, we talked about it on last week's podcast. I'm like, there's no value with Alabama anymore. They're killing teams and not covering. And last week, Alabama scores 7 touchdowns in the first half against Louisiana Lafayette and doesn't cover the point spread. There you go. That's when they dominated the game as much as they could possibly dominate it and didn't cover. So Fresno's been just killing teams and crushing teams and killing them and crushing them. And we haven't seen Fresno being priced in this range. At minus 14 in Reno, we're seeing that the markets aren't sleeping on Fresno anymore.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I missed that portion of what you were saying just because your boy the Greek was calling the office.
Right on. Hey, Greek.
Yeah, I'll let him know you said hello. We got 367, 368 Washington State at Oregon State. Looks like Washington State, the Cougars, laying 17 on the road, 64.5 the total, Teddy.
I mean, when you start talking about the worst team in any given conference, and Oregon State is the weakest team in the Pac-12. It's when you want to find spots where your opponent either is looking ahead or maybe there's a matchup edge that you don't find, or that isn't readily apparent. You want to get to the window with the bottom feeders. There's got to be a kicker. There's got to be something that, not in a real kicker, but there's got to be something in the equation that stands out. And I mean, maybe you got the spot here for Washington State. They're coming off 2 grinders in USC and Utah. They have the bye on deck, followed by Oregon and Stanford, and here they are, laying 17, on the road at Oregon State. But I mean, and of course the recent meetings. Washington State's been able to do whatever they wanted to offensively, but Oregon State's been able to put up points against this team. Last year 52-23. Last visit to Corvallis 35-31. The visit before that to Corvallis 39-32. And of course, when we talk about, I mean, it's 5 years ago, but 5 years ago, Washington State's plus 8.5 in that game at Corvallis. So in 2014, which speaks to where these two programs have moved. Over the course, where the fifth-year seniors are right now. So, yeah, you can make your case for Oregon State here as the, as the feisty home dog, I suppose. You don't love the spot for the road favorite in this one, but it's that type of a leap that you have to make for a team that, defensively, they're getting absolutely annihilated in every game. So, you saw the Ohio State game. It didn't stop. The only team Khalil Tate moved the football against all year was Oregon State. The Sun Devils hung 52 on them last week, 558 yards. It's a defense that, in theory, Washington State should be able to score many, many points against, as long as they keep their focus.
Teddy, if I had to look over the whole card and there was a number that surprised me and I said, what the heck is up with this number?
Me and you both.
It's this next game, 369, 370, Cal at Arizona. We got Cal now laying 2.5 on the road, 57 the total. Have at it, man.
Yeah, and when it's funny because you and I probably do the same thing on Sunday. I'm making numbers, and then I'm looking to see, and you're just looking what jumps, and this one happens. What the heck? Arizona's laying 2.5, and well, now they're not. The markets took care of that problem pretty quickly. Look, I mean, last week's debacle against Oregon for Cal. I mean, it was certainly turnovers were a problem. That being said, they were -4 in turnovers for the game. That being said, they got 10 turnovers in the last 3 games. And when you talk about a Cal team that, they've been playing QB shuffle a little bit. When you got 3 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. I mean, we thought Bowers was going to be the guy, and he hasn't this year so far. For the Bears, and now, of course, the markets have moved 5 points in their direction as we thought it would, and then the number jumped. And there's still questions about the QB position. But, I mean, Arizona, I don't want Arizona. I'll just put it that way. They beat Oregon State. They beat, Southern Utah. Everything else